Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. So happy to be with you again on a Monday. Thank you very much for being with us. We really do appreciate that you take the time with us. We've got a very, very fine show for you to start the week off. I don't know. This might be too good. It might be hard to keep up the pace the rest of the week. Second hour, we've got our good friend Scott Weeman here, who wrote the book, The 12 Steps in the Sacraments. And we're going to talk about recovery and addiction and all that. And your calls are very, very welcome. Second hour on that. First hour, we're going to do Answering Atheism. Trent Horn wrote the book Answering Atheism, among his many books, including Why We're Catholic. If you're an atheist, we'd love it if you'd call 888-318-7884. We always enjoy those conversations, 888-318-7884. If you're not an atheist, but you'd like some help answering atheism, you're also welcome, but it comes with this caveat. We're going to send atheists to the top of the line because we're going to, try to turn them into Christians. Well, we try to do that with everybody. So don't take any offense at it. Our atheist friends, we just love having good, robust conversations. And those times when folks call who disagree with us, those often make for the most good, robust conversations. 888-318-7884, the number. 888-318-7884. As I said, Trent Horn, the author of Answering Atheism, the author of Persuasive Pro-Life, the author of Why We're Catholic, and the genius mind behind the Trent Horn podcast over at Council of Trent. Hi, Trent Horn.
Hello, Cy.
How's that introduction? I don't know if I've used the word genius for you before.
I think it's one that's like salt. One should use it sparingly, I assume. Otherwise, it'll spoil the meal. So, but no, that's well,
you do a lot of brilliant stuff over there at TrentHornPodcast.com. That's where people can get it. But what I like about it is, it's very high level, smart stuff, but also a lot of fun, a lot of silliness, a lot of talking with people who don't agree with you. It's all the good stuff, all the stuff I like in a show.
Oh, yeah. And we've been focusing more now on doing rebuttals. So my goal is once a week to have a rebuttal to a popular anti-Catholic video on YouTube. Today, we just debuted a rebuttal to the Protestant YouTubers Alan Parr and Mike Winger, who are arguing that Catholicism is a cult. By cult, they mean it's a non-Christian religion that claims to be Christian. So I offered a 1-hour breakdown of their arguments, and you can get that Council of Trent podcast, wherever you find it, but especially on YouTube now. We are all our episodes are available there. Council of Trent on YouTube. Be sure to go and subscribe and share that with everyone. Also, I would recommend on my podcast, but also you can find it easily on my YouTube page. Pope Francis released a letter affirming the work of Father James Martin, though I wish the Pope had watched a video I put out a few weeks ago.
I saw that video.
The slippery tactics of Father James Martin, showing that he promotes dangerous ambiguities that can mislead people. That is available, you can watch and see him make these comments to himself. Just go to my YouTube channel, Council of Trent on YouTube, and you can get that. You get all of that. But my aim with the Council of Trent is to edify, inform, entertain when possible. Entertain when possible. I'm sure it's the same that you do at Catholic, with Catholic Answers Live and Focus.
Not edify. We try to avoid edifying. The other ones, yes, but no edifying.
Just educate and entertain. We will not build you up. We will only make you smarter and laugh.
None of that. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. You can find Trent's work over at TrentHornPodcast.com. The one thing you will not find there that you will find here, pictures of cats. Everything else the internet has to offer, though, you will find there. 888-318-7884. Answering Atheism today. If you are an atheist yourself, we would love to talk with you, and you'll go to the top of the line if you're an atheist person, because as I said, we are of the mind that those conversations are the most exciting and interesting when we talk with folks in a respectful way who don't agree with us. 888-318-7884. That's getting to be a rarity, by the way, respectful conversations between people who don't agree with one another in media everywhere. But as Catholics, we just can't have that because we believe the Catholic faith is for everybody. 888-318-7884, the number. Can I go to, I just want to see if I can go to line one. I can go to line one in Orange County, California. Listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app is Dana. Dana, thanks for starting us right off. Are you yourself an atheist?
I am, and finally it got me somewhere. I got put at the top of the top of the queue for this phone call.
Yeah, it's like the AARP for this hour here. 10% off and to the front of the line.
And a couple of Catholic guys are the people that gave me cut. So thank you.
You're welcome. So, what did you want to tell us about being an atheist?
Well, I believe it was with Trent's debate with Matt Dillahunty. He just really had a very difficult time articulating. Matt Dillahunty had a very difficult time articulating why he was even an atheist. And frequently, you just get these bland answers of, well, I haven't been convinced yet. So I thought I would call and just say, hey, I'm an atheist. I think that the universe is godless, but I've got actual reasons for it, a three-pronged reasons. I'll just go over them very quickly and then let Trent respond. But nature's design of brutality, unanswered prayer, and the age-old problem of evil are the three things that I kind of look at, and at least for me, it convinces me that, I don't think that there's a God based on those particular observations that I make. So I don't know if you have any questions about that or whether you want to have a conversation.
Sure.
I realize you only have a few minutes, but
I'm just going to say,
let's do the best we.
Let me just repeat them, Trent. And Dana, it's just a little bit hard to hear you. So I'm going to come back to you, but just try to be as close to the phone as you can. Problem of evil, unanswered prayer, and the design of brutality in nature. These have convinced are the main things that convince them there's no God in this universe.
Yeah, so Dana, I would say it sounds like you're making essentially two arguments: the problem of evil and the problem of divine hiddenness. And thanks for calling, by the way. It's nice to hear from you again. So your argument, the overall structure seems to be, if God existed, the world would not look the way it does. But the way the world looks is not what we would expect if God did exist. And it appears the things you see in the world, you would say, well, we wouldn't have these if there were a God, is suffering and evil. And I'm guessing by design and nature, you mean natural suffering that material creatures undergo, death, decay, illness, pain, things like that. And then you said unanswered prayer, that if God existed, we would expect prayers to be answered more. But I'm cautious of these kinds of arguments because we can't always be sure what the world would look like if God existed. So I could address each of those, but we also, here's the thing, you've picked out, hey, here's these kind of bad things, we wouldn't expect that. I also feel like we got to put the good things in there too to kind of balance it out. So let me give you an illustration I'll steal from some philosophers, because if you can't steal from philosophers, who can you steal from? Imagine you went to like this really decrepit, rundown cabin in the woods. Like it's fallen apart, it's covered in moss, and you would think, well, this is an abandoned cabin, because if somebody lived here, it wouldn't be all messed up like this. And you'd probably be right if that was the only information you had. But let's say you go inside the cabin, and there's a piping hot cup of tea inside of this decrepit cabin. Now, suddenly you're like, wow, this is all weird, but you can't have piping hot tea unless somebody's been here to make it and drink it. So for me, like in the cabin example, that fact kind of outweighs the other stuff. So when I look at some of these things, the facts of like the universe needing a reason for its existence, objective morality, stuff like that, that kind of outweighs the problematic stuff you've brought up. That's one area I can look at. Do you at least see where I'm coming from with that kind of a way of looking at it?
Yeah, I do. And I'm not saying that, there's not a rebuttal to my non-belief.
Sure.
I did want to clarify one thing on the design of brutality. What I really mean by that is nature's design is based on brutality. It's not like indiscriminate. It's, for life to exist, one creature has to brutally kill another creature or perish. And so that's kind of, and then with evolution, with the natural selection of evolution, you really don't need any excuses. That makes sense. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, physical creatures. Well, let me jump in, Dana, and then we can carry it over maybe a tiny little bit after the break. With physical creatures, as they kind of grow in their perfections, other things will decrease because they got to share a material world. So you have problem of evil and unanswered prayer. Before we go to the break, I want to focus in on one of them that I think is the one that I don't think is as detrimental. It's the unanswered prayer one. So what I'm wondering, what do you mean by bad? Do you mean like if God existed, more prayers would be answered? Like, what would it look like if God existed? Like, what would prayer kind of look like? Can you help me out with that?
Yeah, okay, so I will give you just really quick. I listen to Relevant Radio a lot. I'm not trying to plug them if they're a competitor of yours, but they've got some good apologists on
That's
there.
Fine. Yeah.
We're supposed to bleep that when someone says Relevant Radio. You just boop, bleep that right out. Come on. Okay, go ahead.
You're the R word.
The R word. Go ahead.
At any rate, they have an ongoing prayer count reference the end of abortion, and pray for the end of abortion. It's up to 350 million prayers to end abortion, and yet abortion is still, in practice. And so prayer seems to me, completely random, that a Muslim praying will have the same results as a Catholic praying, and they'll have the same result as somebody, and I'm not trying to be offensive, that's praying to a rock. It all kind of comes out the same. And so it does seem if some sentient being was so powerful to create the universe, then they might hear some of those prayers, and if they were benevolent, they would answer them in a consistent pattern, which I'm not seeing. So it's something that factors into my non-belief unanswered prayer. I hope I explained it okay.
Yes, I see what you're saying, Dana. I'll offer two responses. Number one, I think that people who are not Christian can have their prayers answered because God loves everyone. So you could have somebody praying to their pagan deity to be healed, and then they end up getting healed, and they mistakenly think it's the pagan deity when it's the true God who loves them and doesn't want them to suffer, and answers the prayer instead. So I don't think that it's... So when I look at it all over... well, I guess here's for me the thing with the unanswered prayer. Like, if there were no God, we would expect there to be no reports of prayers answered in miraculous or providential ways. But actually, so I don't think it's not, there are a lot of cases where people pray, and I think God answers every prayer, but sometimes it's no. He says no, he declines the request. But I don't think the no's are sufficient evidence to outweigh the many yeses that exist, both anecdotally, and there have been some systematic prayer studies that have found a positive correlation between prayer and people getting better from illnesses. There have been a few studies, not like the biggest studies that have been done, but you wouldn't expect every study on prayer to get the same result, because if you're experimenting on God, it's not really double blind. He can say, I don't feel like being in this study or that study. So that's what I would offer in that. Dana, we'll get your email address. I think I have your email address, but if not, our call screener can get that. I'll send you some of those studies on prayer. And but thanks for calling in. That's always a big help.
And we have to head to a break, but I just want to let you know, if you are an atheist who would be willing to talk with us about your atheism, or if you're approaching atheism, maybe I'm just a really strong agnostic or whatnot. But if you're not a believer, we're answering atheism is our theme today. The author of the book Answering Atheism is our guest, Trent Horn. The number is 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The EWTN home video highlight for June is St. Joseph the Worker. Father Joseph Mary Wolfe explores the biblical image of St. Joseph, reflects upon the dignity of our own work, and examines the crucial role that fathers play in the family. Order your DVD at EWTNRC.com 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or call 1-800-854-6316.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn is our guest. I was mentioning earlier the Council of Trent podcast, his podcast, very popular. If you want to be a patron of the podcast, visit TrentHornPodcast.com, and you get all kinds of cool stuff. Access to Trent's 18-hour catechism study series, access to the audio version of Trent's rebuttal series. You get Trent's 18-hour New Testament study series. You get a Council of Trent mug. Come on. And you get a lot more. Go to TrentHornPodcast.com. Go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, we do the whole catechism and the whole New Testament. So it's a video study series to walk you through it. So just go and be sure to check that out at TrentHornPodcast.com.
This hour, however, we're talking about atheism, and you're welcome to call whether you're atheist or not. Answering atheism is our theme, 888-318-7884. Call dropped from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jim from Tulsa, listening on 94.9 FM. I'm an atheist because I don't think God is necessary and that science explains him away. The Big Bang caused the existence of the world, not God.
Yeah, well, what I would ask Jim is, all right, so Jim, do you believe that the universe, like all of space-time, matter, and energy, came into existence from absolute nothing? Like, do you believe that everything that exists came from a state of absolute nothingness, like there was a beginning to time? If he does believe that and he says it was not God, it was the Big Bang, I might ask him, what is the difference between God and the Big Bang? Like, what do you mean by the Big Bang? If you just mean, well, something came from nothing, there was this cause, we call it the Big Bang, that's kind of the same as saying something came from nothing with no cause at all. To which I would say, well, do you have any other examples of something coming into existence without a cause? This causal principle kind of underscores the rationality of the universe. If it were true that you could get something from nothing without a cause, why don't we see things popping into existence for no reason all the time? We don't. So that bodes well to say no, whenever it begins to exist, has a cause for its existence. And to say, well, science can explain it, I have a problem with that because, okay, so if we get the universe from nothing, right, we got a state of absolute nothingness. You can't have a scientific explanation of nothing from nothing. Because I would ask, what is a scientific explanation? What is a scientific explanation? A scientific explanation is just, well, there's matter and energy, and it tends to act in these certain ways, and that's why we see things. So it's like, why, and sometimes I'll give an atheist credit. Sometimes scientific explanations are preferable to supernatural ones. Some people think, for example, if they wake up at night, there's a ghost hovering over them in their bed, or a demon or somebody like that. I think actually that's probably in many cases, not all, but in many cases, something called sleep paralysis or old hag syndrome. Not to be misogynistic, it's really called old hag syndrome. Has it ever happened to you, Si? Have you ever woken up and you thought somebody was there and you couldn't move?
No, that's never happened to me. No.
I have scarier dreams than most people. But it happens, you wake up and you're not fully awake, so your muscles can't respond to your brain, so you have sleep paralysis.
No, that's never happened.
And you imagine there is something on you pushing you down, but it's sleep paralysis. So there you'd say the scientific explanation is, well, neurons in the brain tend to operate under these conditions. This is why that happens. Okay, great. But notice scientific explanations are matter and energy, and we say the laws of nature, which is another way of saying matter and energy tend to behave in these ways. But absolute nothing, you can't have a scientific explanation. There's no matter, there's no energy, there's nothing to tend to act in a certain way. So it's impossible from a state of nothingness to have a scientific explanation. The second you say, well, it's because of the Blorgon field. It's like, okay, well, we're not talking about something from nothing. It's the Blorgon field. How long has that been around? What is it? What constitutes properties? I would say rather, state of absolute nothingness, you can only have a personal explanation. So when we explain things, there's two kinds of explanations. There are scientific ones and personal ones. Like the question, why is my tea on the oven, the stove, boiling? The scientific explanation is, well, heat causes the atoms to be in an excitable state, and that boils the water. The personal explanation is, I wanted to drink tea. They're both valid.
Sure.
But in this case, I would say, well, because there's no scientific explanation possible, there could only be a personal explanation. There is something from nothing because a personal agent, God, willed there to be something.
You know what, Jim, thanks very, very much for the call. If you want to call back and we can have a conversation, if you're able to, you're very welcome here. I would like to point out that we do have a focus episode about this where we talked to a Harvard physicist, no, Harvard cosmologist, astrochemist. That's the best way to say it. Is the Big Bang creation? And I think you'd be very interested in what the answer was.
I don't mean to embarrass you, but I believe it would be a starologist. Those are the people who study stars.
Oh, I think you're probably right. Starologist, or yeah, that's probably right. You're so smart,
Yeah.
Trent. Man,
It's very important to get the terms right. I had a brother who got an online degree in starology, so and he's very proud of it.
Congratulations to your whole family on that.
I don't want to besmirch him.
Her name is Dr. Karen Oberg. She's a superstar in science. Well, she teaches at Harvard, and they're pretty good at science. So if you want to watch it, you can find it at CatholicAnswersFocus.com.
Oh, and one last thing. I'm so sorry. I hate correcting you. It's actually pronounced Harvard.
Harvard. I apologize to everyone at Harvard. Did you ever hear the whole old joke about how you know someone went to Harvard? I say this as a graduate of Boston College. Do you know the joke? How do you know someone went to Harvard?
How do you know someone went to Harvard?
They tell you within the first minute of meeting you. Sorry. Is that funny? No, that's not funny. I apologize. George in Iowa, listening on Iowa Catholic Radio. You are up next, George. Thank you for being patient and waiting. Why are you an atheist, George?
Thanks for taking my call. The problem with these, in our limited lifetimes, we have a church that says that, we present ourselves as intellectually honest and we're searching and, we're learning along with the rest of the human race. But when it comes to this one answer, because of, Aquinas' 5 ways and these other principles, we've got that all figured out. And after listening to this, I might have texted Trent Horn on Strange Notions at one point or another. I'm not sure, but I've listened to so many apologetics, and it seems to boil down to, whether intentionally or not, it's just saying whatever is convenient in the moment, depending on what the argument calls for. God is the self-existent, necessary being that requires no explanation. And whenever an atheist tries to have a conversation with theists, they always get shoehorned into some kind of easily knocked down position of saying, well, you're saying that you have all the answers. And then the atheist says, well, no, I don't. I'm just thinking, I don't know about the origins of the universe. Maybe it wasn't a state of nothingness. Maybe if time begins there, then it's not what we would intuitively, compare to the rest of what we experience in reality. Whereas when it comes to saying God is the self-necessary, self-explanatory, the ultimate of ultimates, what am I supposed to do with that?
Well, George, let me jump in here. Let me jump in. I'm not going to be able to answer your broad charge that apologists just put forward convenient explanations. I think human beings are wired to produce convenient explanations. Everybody suffers from cognitive bias, confirmation bias, things like that. So I personally, it's something I've tried to avoid. But I think it's good to be skeptical of things and to test them. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible for people to not have reached ultimate conclusions on things. So let me put this out there. I think that when it comes to the explanation for why the universe exists, there are really 4 options for people. There is an ultimate explanation. There is an infinite series of explanations. There is no explanation. It just exists. Or you personally do not know. And the 4th one you're saying here, I think that's perfectly acceptable. A lot of people are in the position where they don't know. But other people might try to investigate the other 3 options, and they might land on ultimate. and then think about what are the attributes of that, and it might seem pretty divine to them. I would think that the people who say personally they don't know, that's fine. The claim that nobody knows, that actually carries a burden of proof with it. I haven't seen very many people be able to carry. So would you agree, though, George, that the explanation of why the universe exists, it's either there's an ultimate well, we'll come back. Please stay on the line. Let's come back. And then I would enjoy hearing your thoughts on that.
Answering Atheism this hour with the author of the book, Answering Atheism, Trent Horn. Your calls welcome, 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Catholic Answers is doing it again. We're holding our 7th annual Apologetics Conference this September in beautiful San Diego, California, and we'd like to see you there. Join us September 23rd to 26th for a lively and inspiring conference with an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to jumpstart your faith. It's a great chance to meet all your favorite Catholic Answers apologists and very special guests as we spend 4 days talking about worshiping and adoring our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is where it all begins. Don't miss what promises to be the event of the season. Join us this September for a conference that is sure to ignite, inspire, and inform your faith. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Enter promo code EARLY to save $30. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 888-291-8000 to register.
Matt Swaim here. Join us tomorrow for the Sunrise Morning Show when Kevin Wells joins us to talk about his new book, Priest and Beggar, The Heroic Life of Venerable Aloysius Schwartz. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Answering Atheism this hour, 888-318-7884, our number. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Trent Horn is our guest, and George is on the line from Iowa. Trent and George were in the midst of a conversation about George's claim. At least in part, you were talking about the claim that George made that there's kind of slipperiness to apologists, I suppose would be one way to say it, or apologists just find convenient answers to justify belief in God.
And I'll quickly recap. George, are you still there with us?
Hang on, give me a sec to get George's line open. George, you with us?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, let me quickly recap since we had to go to a commercial break. I would say convenient answers are a human condition. We have cognitive biases, all of us. We have to work hard to avoid. But I would say that logically, it seems like there's 4 positions a person could hold on the question, why does the universe exist? There's an ultimate explanation for it that has no other explanation. There's an infinite series of explanations. There's no explanation. The universe just exists inexplicably. Or the 4th position you could have is, I don't know why the universe exists. And I think that's a fine position to have if you haven't looked into the question. That's an easy position to hold. I do think that a related position, nobody knows why the universe exists, that actually is a broader answer that requires a burden of proof to be carried. But I would say to George, what would be wrong with someone looking at those options and saying, well, the only one I find tenable is there is an ultimate explanation, and they reason from that this ultimate explanation has to have at least some divine attributes, and so it pushes them towards the God question. I don't see what's wrong about that way of thinking. What do you think?
Well, Kent, in regards to that, considering Yahweh as an ultimate explanation, seeing as I am familiar with the Socratic method of asking questions until we get to the foundation of like a claim, and then we search for a contradiction as we get to simpler and simpler terms. When it comes to the claim that Yahweh is an ultimate explanation, I have to ask, okay, without me saying, therefore, atheism is superior, if it looks like neither of us know, because the Yahweh explanation starts using circular reasoning, things like, well, Yahweh is self-existent, Yahweh is the ultimate, Yahweh is divine, and then now we could go into that with Socratic dialogue, and I can ask you what all those things mean. Is that going to take too long? Possibly. But when it comes to that...
Well, wait, George, let's step away from the God question.
You wrong. How am I supposed to discriminate wrong answers from right answers when it comes to saying things like God is the ultimate and God doesn't need an explanation because God is self-existent and it's part of his own necessary nature? You see, I've heard a lot of this many times before.
Sure.
Forgive me if I don't get the terms exactly right, but my point is that I don't need to get it exactly right. I could become a Catholic priest and say these things, and I'll get away with it because
George, hold
God
on.
is just the ultimate.
But let's go back to my three options for the universe: an explanation that explains itself, an infinite number of explanations, or the universe. I guess there's a fourth: the universe explains its own existence, or it has no explanation. We're not even mentioning God there. Is it valid? Are all of those valid possibilities? Universe explains itself, no explanation, part of an infinite chain, or is explained by something that explains itself? Like, are all of those valid options a person could pursue?
I'm not sure. You're talking about a mind, though, when it comes to, the explanation that Yahweh is behind it. I'm talking, we take issue with atheistic ultimate answers, which say that it's not a mind. Some say that that's simpler. Is that possible? That doing the same things that an atheist positive answer would be, that the universe explains itself, is it simpler when they don't talk about will, volition, intentionality, complex things like that? Because I don't accept divine simplicity. We could go into that. That's another can of worms. Sorry for bringing it up.
That's fine, though. That would probably require a more... Right. All I am saying is that there's a two-step part here, okay? First would be, is it possible that there is an ultimate explanation for reality, that something that contains its own explanation? It's not the universe. It's something else that explains everything and explains itself. It might not be God. It might not be divine. But if there were such a thing, that kind of gives you a few more steps towards God. But I mean, we could disagree about that. But I would agree, if there is no ultimate explanation, you're not going to have God. But if there is, that kind of gets you down the path a little bit more. So could there be, let's take the word God out of it, just an ultimate explanation for why something exists, and it is its own explanation. It stops the chain of explanations, you see?
I see what you mean. Part of this discussion is when someone, you define the proposition that, from the before example, from the text question, that, well, there was a state, well, then here's your premise that there was a state of nothingness. If you are familiar with the Messianic Manic, who is a philosopher on YouTube, he argues quite convincingly that this is a false premise, and in many cases it's a straw man to say that a skeptic or a materialist who thinks that the universe has its own explanation. It's a straw man to say that they say that nothingness was ever a state of existence at all.
I would agree with you that
there was a state of nothing.
Right, but you would say that the universe has a finite. If it has a finite past, if there are a finite series of causes, then the causal chain terminates in a first cause that would have to be uncaused.
Considering that there are asymptotes in mathematics where you can get closer and closer to zero without ever reaching zero, considering that we can, conceptualize those, and considering that we are quite sure that time dilation is a real phenomenon, is it fair that I have to accept one's premise that it's just a finite line and then it stops from our perspective? These things don't really make a lot of sense if we're talking about the entire universe itself being compressed.
Sorry, I apologize. Go ahead, respond.
Right, yeah, and then we've got some other callers here I would like to be able to get to. But my response to George would be, I would say that it is relevant. Things like gravitational time dilation, those apply to the local passage of time related to gravity's effects on space-time. But if you have an absolute boundary in the past, where you have an absolute beginning to space and time, it wouldn't apply in that case. On the point about asymptotes and approaching infinite limits, my reply would be that we can conceptualize in the infinite in the realm of mathematics, but when we try to apply actual infinite series or actual infinite sets in reality itself, we quickly lead to contradictions. Famous examples of this include, people can look up later, Thomson's lamp or the Grim Reaper paradox, that show you could have those approaching infinite limits in mathematics, like where you get an answer that's like 1/2 or something. But in real life, where you have a lamp that has to be on or off after an infinite number of flips of a switch, you end up with all kinds of contradictions that I don't think apply. But I'm grateful for George to bring that up, and hopefully he'll be able to call back and we can delve into the issues a little bit more in the future.
I'm sorry, George, that we have to move on, but thank you very, very much for the call. You are always welcome here, but we do have more callers on the line, and we want to try to get to as many as we can before we finish this hour. Answering Atheism, our topic this hour, the author of the book, Answering Atheism, our guest, Trent Horn. Right, more with Trent right after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
War of words. Conservative senators question the amount of taxpayer money Planned Parenthood received from the Paycheck Protection Program, investigating abuse cases. Why Pope Francis ordered an apostolic visitation of an archdiocese in Germany. Inner city revitalization. The Archbishop of Baltimore shares new initiatives to serve young people.
EWTN News Nightly with Tracy Sable. Tonight, 9 Eastern on EWTN Television and Radio.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying, and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's always fun when Trent is here, and Trent is here. If you've got a question, you're welcome to call 888-31-TRUTH. We're talking with atheists for the most part today. We've been open to speaking to other folks, but I think all the callers have, in fact, been atheists or agnostics, and that is great. We love those conversations. If you'd like to call, and have that conversation with us, you are welcome here. Let's go to Charles in Oklahoma, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Charles, thanks for waiting. Are you yourself an atheist?
No, I'm an agnostic.
Okay.
But I was trying to figure out, okay, I believe that there is a God to a certain extent, but like the Bible and all the scriptures and all that is something that people made up. Maybe, just possibly, a part of the Bible is true. But it's like the fisherman that comes and tells us a story that he bought a fish. Well, then it ended up swallowing a man whole, and he lives in his mouth for 3 days. You know what I'm talking about? In actuality, he caught a fish, but it was a largemouth bass.
So you are literally
by the
saying
end of
that the
the
Bible
story-
is a fish story.
No, I'm just saying that it's a bunch of stories that were fabricated. A portion of it is true, but the majority of it is because people back then, they believed everything that people would tell them. Like, oh, he got swallowed by a whale. Oh, really? Wow.
Well,
What
Charles,
happened?
wait. Charles, I want to jump in. I want to jump in on that. I hear that one a lot. That, well, people in the Bible, in the times of the Bible, they just believed any crazy story that was told to them. In the first century, did the majority of people in the Roman Empire become Christian or not become Christian in the first century?
Well, they became Christian because otherwise they would have got the rack.
Well, actually, no. I'm talking about in the first century when Christians were persecuted. So the Roman Empire was actually persecuting people. But even before that, Christians were not in a position to threaten anyone. But in the first century, most people who heard the proclamation of the resurrection did not believe it. Most of the Jews of that time who believed in God, believed God could do miracles, most of the Jews did not believe Jesus was the Messiah. Most of the Greeks did not. Paul said the Greeks thought this was foolishness. So I want to challenge your assumption about people in the first century that they knew, when, like, if anything, they knew the truth, dead people stay dead. They knew that better than us because they saw a lot more dead people than we have. Everybody was dying, and they knew, hey, when you die, you don't come back. And that was something they were just as much as the sun rises and sets. And yet, so I would say people, they were actually very skeptical of some things. In fact, and most people didn't believe in the resurrection. So like my question would be, all right, well then why did Jesus's followers, why did they think that he rose from the dead when they could go to his tomb, see that he's still there? And why wouldn't they think he's like every other failure? Like, why did they think that he rose from the dead?
That I'm not sure on why they would. I mean, I don't know what's in their mind, but I think that there's a God, but he doesn't have a whole lot to do with this world because otherwise this world would be a lot different than it is. You see what I'm saying?
What would be different about it?
Well, billions of people or millions and millions of people wouldn't die every single day, and people would live longer. The medicine and the diseases, there wouldn't be disease.
Okay, well, Charles, it seems like, Charles, so now you're saying, well, if there was a God who cares, there wouldn't be as much suffering. And I agree that a lot of suffering was not a part of God's original plan, like death and human suffering. But at the same time, I think in the midst of that, we can see, hey, wait a minute, I've got a moral duty. Like if somebody is sick or they're starving, I should help them. And if I don't help them when I easily could, I'm a bad person. Like I've got this duty to go out and help other people, even people I don't even know or I'll never meet. If I can donate to help them, I should. But where does that moral duty come from? Like it's a fact we ought to do good and that we shouldn't do evil things like rape or torture or things like that. I think the existence of the good and evil you cite is actually evidence there's a universal standard of good and evil. It comes from God, who just is perfect goodness itself. So, Charles, what I would like to do is to I'd like you to stay on the line, give our call screener your email address, and I'll send you a copy of my book, Why We Are Catholic. It'll give you some more to chew on. And then if you read the book, feel free to call back and we could kind of dialogue more in depth. But I'm grateful that you called.
Thanks, Charles. Very grateful that so many people have taken up the challenge of calling, but that may mean we won't get to everybody. We'll do our very, very best. But thank you for the calls. We're answering atheism today with Trent Horn this hour. We go now to British Columbia, Canada. Peter in British Columbia, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Peter, go ahead with your points for Trent Horn.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's more just a question. From an evolutionary perspective, I mean, evolution seems to be accepted through and through by almost all credible scientists. So that being considered, and the importance of a soul in humanity and religion, at what point in the evolutionary history are animals, humans, Homo sapiens injected with a soul, and what happened before that? Like, how do you square that, I suppose?
We don't know the exact date, but I would say it was somewhere, chronologically speaking, it was somewhere after The Land Before Time, but before the Flintstones.
Come on now. That cannot possibly be the correct answer. It had to be before The Land Before Time.
No, because The Land Before Time, at least, I don't know, there have been 87 sequels. I don't think they ever show the emergence of human beings. It's just the dinosaurs before their extinction.
That's just good
I
science.
can't wait for The Land Before Time 87. It gets to that. Yeah, so Charles, that's an interesting point. You know, I was actually writing about this a little bit for a new book I'm working on where I deal with my own doubts about the faith that I've had. And one of those deals with, okay, well, I'm firmly committed to the view all life on this planet evolved from a common ancestor about, well, I don't know, 3 or 4 billion years ago. The Earth is about 4.54 billion years. We probably had the emergence of of life from primitive amino acids 3-4 billion years ago. Then we have the emergence of modern Homo sapiens and different hominids. They kind of stretch about, somewhere 300,000 years to 50,000 years ago. I'll be honest with you, I don't know the exact date, but I will say that there was a point where there developed among all, and with evolution, I would say, look, all creatures, a common ancestor, they all emerge the same way, but only one of the species has very distinct traits that are different from other animals, namely the ability to have moral reasoning, judge moral worth, rationality, consciousness, and specific consciousness, not just mere sentience. And so I think that the unique abilities human beings have and the unique value human beings have within the evolutionary landscape points to God being specially involved in human evolution. So I would say at some point God gave the human beings a soul, and there's different ways of understanding how that was. A very popular view is that there was a literal couple, Adam and Eve, 2 human beings, and all humans descended from them. That runs into some problems with modern genetics, though. Another view, far less common among Catholicism, but some people hold it, is that Adam and Eve are symbolic in the biblical text about groups of people. And so God gave immortal souls to groups of humans at one time in the past. That would solve the genetic diversity problem, but kind of makes doctrines like original sin hard to wrap your head around. And then there's another proposal is that you have primitive human beings, hominids, and they don't have an immortal soul. They don't have rationality like us. God picks 2 of them to give them an immortal soul, and then their children mate with other hominids at the time. Their offspring have souls, and so Homo anatomicus, human in anatomy only, from there became Homo theologicus, the human being with a soul. There's a lot of different views on that. If we get your email address, I could send you a few articles on the subject. But I don't believe there is a contradiction. In fact, I would say the uniqueness of human beings and the improbability of a universe where evolution is possible, I think both of those actually count towards God. But those are my thoughts. I threw a lot out there at you. Is that a helpful start?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we had longer, I would have some rebuttals, but yeah, some interesting answers I've never heard before. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, yeah, give your email address. I'll send you some follow-up articles on that.
But in all honesty, though, with each of the scenarios you propose there, they all have problems. They have some difficulty. So there's a lot of work needs to be done in this area.
It's a big one, and I think that Catholics who say there is no problem with reconciling Adam and Eve and science, I believe they do a great disservice to the question. That there will be people who will tell me evolution it's fake, it's not real, it's not. Well, I don't hold to that view. Pope Benedict XVI didn't hold to that view. Pope St. John Paul II didn't hold to that view. Cardinal Henry Newman didn't hold to that view. There have been some bright intellectual Catholics, faithful Orthodox ones, who have seen the evidence for the biological theory of evolution and common descent is extremely powerful. And we have human fossils dated to hundreds of thousands of years accurately. And we have to figure this out. So the view that, oh, well, it's easy, it's just Adam and Eve, what the Bible said, that's it, and science is just wrong. I worry that will push people towards atheism, who will say, no, the science is not wrong. But on the other hand side, yeah, to try to reconcile it with doctrines related to original sin and human uniqueness and the text of Genesis, it requires a lot of careful deliberation. But I think that's what we have to do to give respect to the revelation God has given us in sacred scripture and the revelation he's given us in the natural world that we can discover through human reason.
Amen. But none of this, having said all of that, none of this amounts to an insurmountable problem, because clearly God did it, and there's a way that he did it. The fact that you and I, Trent and Cy, or even Pope Benedict, or Pope Francis, or Cardinal Newman don't know the ultimate answer. How did he do it? It means nothing. That's inconsequential.
It's
we
similar
know that
to the question, right? It's similar to the question of creation from nothing.
Yeah,
I can't explain to you how God made the universe from nothing, but I know that he had to have. I may not be able to explain to you how God gave human beings immortal souls, but I know that he did, and that the genetic evidence about human lineage and ancestry does not contradict that fact.
Right, and there's nothing, and we can be confident too in moving forward, because there's nothing in the, even if you fully embrace evolutionary theory, there's nothing in it that makes illogical the essence of the Jewish Christian teaching that God is the creator, that he intentionally created creation with human beings as the height of creation, that there was a fall at some time, that there was salvation. None of that is made a lie. It just becomes, as it always has been. We have to admit, look, understanding creation is beyond me. We'll do the best we can, but it's going to take thousands of years to unravel some of these truths.
Right. That's right. Yeah, and we may not have it completely figured out, but I think that we have enough to provide a sensible explanation. And frankly, I would say that those who are on the atheistic side have more of a difficulty explaining human uniqueness, free will, moral worth, moral obligation, consciousness, beauty from a purely atheistic worldview. I would say naturalistic evolution is more of a problem for them than theistic evolution is a problem for me.
Amen. And I always get that question to Job. It just sticks in you, doesn't it? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the world? I wasn't there, Lord. You were.
Right. Amen.
Trent Horn, our guest. You can find his podcast at TrentHornPodcast.com. That's the Council of Trent. It's one of the very finest things on the internet. Also, you can find his books at shop.catholic.com, including Answering Atheism. Maybe you want to get it for yourself or for someone else. Trent Horn, thank you very much for a very fine hour.
Thank you for having me.
I'll see you tomorrow, too. You're back with us tomorrow. He looks surprised.
Me or someone just as confident.
All right. Scott Weeman next here on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, and as promised, our good friend Scott Weeman here with the bearer of good news, in addition to being a very welcome guest. Scott is the author of The 12 Steps and the 7 Sacraments. Did I say it correctly?
The 12 Steps and the Sacraments, yeah.
And the Sacraments. But there are 7. Why do I put the 7 in there? I don't know. Just to throw people off who might not agree with us on the number of sacraments. The 12 Steps and the Sacraments, a beautiful book, and he's been working with addiction and recovery for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. You have to tell me the website because you're still doing a lot of stuff by video, right?
We're doing stuff, virtual meetings, in-person meetings.
Yeah.
CatholicInRecovery.com.
CatholicInRecovery.com is where you can go. Thanks for coming back, Scott.
My pleasure.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you know what I'm congratulating him for? Baby number 3 coming in August. That is just wonderful.
A huge gift.
I feel like I hate to say
this happens. Yeah.
I don't want to you're very Catholic these days because virtually every time I see you, there's news about a new baby.
We either just had a baby or we are announcing a new baby. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, our youngest turns 1 year old tomorrow, Anna Lee. And our
wonderful.
oldest will be 3 years old next month.
That was all good. Congratulations. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And Catholic in Recovery, how's that going?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. A lot of cool things happening. First of all, the fact that I have a family, that I have a wife and kids is an absolute miracle. As I was mentioning before the show, God years ago pulled me out of the gutter where none of this was even a possibility or a hope.
Right.
So I'm very grateful. And
so
to share it on the radio, what a gift.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear you talk that way right from the get-go. I think there's so much shame around addiction, so much hiding and isolation and loneliness. I'm sure all of these are part of the whole structure of the thing. But to hear you say, I was in the gutter, while we're talking about you're expecting your 3rd child now, it's a powerful testament to the fact that there is healing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We baptized our youngest a month ago or so. And we had beautiful, much love around the church, family and such.
Yeah.
Gazing around as we were at the baptismal font and got to, made eye contact with a few people who were in the recovery group that helped get me sober 9-10 years ago when I was in the gutter and just crawling my way out. And they were the hands that helped reach me out. And and then
Scott.
to see them, in baptism, gates opening up, and this is my beloved child with whom I'm well pleased, and to all gravy, all good family love and stuff like that, but then to make eye contact and just remember where we were.
Yeah. Our number is 888-318-7884, and I want to tell you if you would like some help with the sacraments, or the role that the sacraments play in your own recovery, if you'd like some other kind of conversation, help from a Christian perspective on your recovery, you're very, very welcome here, 888-318-7884. Perhaps you have someone in the family or a friend that you would like to know how to handle that situation or how to be helpful anyways in that situation, you're also welcome to call 888-318-7884. It's getting to be a couple times a year we're doing these programs, and we always get a tremendous response. I really do think we should do them more. But then if we do them more, you're going to have so many kids because you get a new kid every time you come on here. So, let's just talk for a quick second about a particular, I suppose, maybe possible Catholic pitfall to some of the helps that are available for someone who's suffering in addiction, particularly being the temptation to spiritualize problems that need more than. And I hate to say it this way, maybe my theology is not quite, but they need more than merely a spiritual response. Everything we do needs to have that component, but we can't merely leave everything up to a spiritual answer. Am I saying that awkwardly, or is that?
No, absolutely right.
Okay.
God moves mountains.
That's my favorite way to be right. Yeah. Absolutely right.
God moves mountains, and he asks us to pick up the shovel.
Oh, praise God.
There
Beautifully done. Yeah, right.
So you're absolutely right. Too often we have an over-spiritualized response to challenges that we might approach, which might evolve around addiction, or oftentimes around things that we don't really have a full grasp of, and so we're just kind of pulling at straws, and we have an overgeneralized idea of what addiction recovery is because we have an overgeneralized idea of what an addict is and what that looks like, and so therefore we might be contrary. We might Yeah, we might be counter or have contrarian ideas to things like 12 steps. Some people, in Catholic circles or who might have I don't know, maybe a lack of understanding about what 12-step recovery is, might think that it's a cult, that it is one that is pushing people away from a true Christian God. But I think in my experience, 12-step recovery groups, which there are 12-step groups that apply to all sorts of addiction types, as well as those impacted by the family disease of addiction, they meet people in a place where they are at. Not everyone that walks into a room of recovery seeking help is a Christian or a theist, or So we must be a large, welcoming umbrella. But the beautiful thing about that is that once people get an understanding of the miracles that God can work, once we do pick up the shovel, he starts moving mountains, and all of a sudden new life is emerging around us.
Right.
Then we're a little bit more open to a relationship with God or Jesus Christ. We might begin calling, referring to him, or even as a her, as a higher power in 12-step recovery groups. That's fine. It's better than a blatant revolt against anything God.
Our number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Is fear of the meeting part of dealing with addiction? Like, I don't know what's going to happen at that meeting. I don't know what I'll do. I don't know what they'll say. Is that part of the deal?
Yes. People often, nearly always, want to combat an addiction or a problem, especially something that's so sensitive as this, can be so shameful, so fear-provoking. We want to do it in secrecy. We want to do it in isolation and hiding. And, the solution truly is unity in the body of Christ, and fellowship and recovery, and finding someone that can look you in the eye and say, I know where you've been.
Yeah.
Rather than, concerned family members and friends who remind us of all the reasons that we have to get sober or clean up our act or, stop behaving in a compulsive or addictive way. But we got to recognize addiction as being, well, first of all, 12-step recovery model looks at it as a disease. And truly, I think that we can look at it as a spiritual malady that requires a spiritual solution. But it's also, that solution really is the body of Christ meeting the body of Christ. Just like I said, it's basically those who have found water show those who are thirsty the way.
Our number again, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I am going to go to the phones. You're welcome to call if the addiction issue is your own personally, if it's a family member's. You mentioned, you said the family, what did you say? The family disease of addiction? Is that how you say it?
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean?
That means that addiction does not just affect the individual who is addicted, but rather the entire family. And so, and I could extrapolate that. There's a lot of psychological principles in that. I think that there's a lot of spiritual principles within that. In that, when one member of the family is absent or is irresponsible or irresponsive, other members of the family have to adapt, find their way, truly. I think that there's a opportunity there to seek God as. But that's not oftentimes the case. On a very human level, people get a little bit spun up. And so we find that those who are impacted by the family disease of addiction, that often reveals itself later in adulthood. And so many people who identify themselves as adult children of alcoholics or a dysfunctional home recognize patterns within themselves that don't serve them any longer in adulthood, but are really just coping mechanisms to living in a family with alcoholism. The same can be true if you're a spouse, if you're a parent, if you're a sibling of an addict. And that applies to not only alcoholism, all sorts of addictions, drug addiction, pornography and lust addiction. Gambling is really sad to see the family effect. But all these different things where we're seeking something that is not God in place of God.
888-318-7884. Our guest is Scott Weeman. He's the founder of Catholic in Recovery. You can find them at catholicinrecovery.com. I always say the wrong one, so I want to make sure I got it right. Got you right while you were drinking a little water, too. Also, the author of 12 Steps and the Sacraments. Your call's welcome, 888-318-7884. And there already are a whole bunch of calls, so we'll take a very quick break and be right back with those calls right after this.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live. The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God. Yeah, at first I love the show, but I just wanted to call to encourage that previous caller who had called about the Latin Mass and just encourage him to keep giving it a try and especially try to meet some folks outdoors and his wife meet some people, and that does make that experience so much better. And thank you for your historical background, and it was a good interpretation of the history.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, joined by Scott Weeman, father of three, the founder of Catholic in Recovery, which you can find at catholicinrecovery.com. They have in-person meetings. If they don't have in-person meetings where you are, they have ways to help you get those meetings started, and they have internet meetings, or what do you call them?
Virtual meetings?
Virtual meetings, yeah. What fancy words you people use over there.
You're a great promoter, though.
Yeah, I am?
Yeah. Great job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Also, there's more to talk about. There's a workbook, there's a retreat, but we'll get to that other stuff. I want to get to some calls. You okay to get to calls?
Please, that's the best part.
All right, let's start with Thomas in St. Louis, Missouri, listening on the Covenant Network. Thomas, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead with your question for our guest, Scott Weeman.
Hello?
Hi, Thomas.
Yep, I do have a question.
Okay.
I just would like to ask about addiction, because you guys are talking about addiction.
Yes. Okay.
Am I live right now?
I am so sorry. You are on the air, yes, with our guest, Scott Weeman. So please go ahead with whatever your question is.
Hey, Thomas.
I was just wondering, how do you overcome addiction when without the church, like if you're not part of the church?
Good question.
And
care to share a little bit more about your situation to give us a little bit more context?
Thomas? All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's address that first part, and we'll see if Thomas wants to make another comment. But so you're not part of the church. What's the hope of recovery? How do you do it?
Well, I was not considering myself a part of the church when I found recovery, and found a 12-step recovery group that applied to the addiction that was killing me most. I am a multiple winner, multi-time winner, so addicted to many things. Would apply the 12 steps to many different types of addictions and compulsions. Alcoholism, drug addiction, compulsive sexual behavior, all sorts of stuff. God has freed me, and I'm really grateful. But I had no relationship with the church before I found recovery. And this, so I found really just wasn't going because I wanted to be a better Christian or because I was afraid of, damnation. I was simply just wanted a better life for myself, and everything that was important to me was falling apart, simply, clearly as a direct result of my addiction. Now, denial is thick and heavy, and it makes it really hard for us to accept the responsibility for ourselves to pick up that shovel while God moves mountains.
Right.
And so, so it can be challenging for us to find our way. But oftentimes we come not on our best day, but oftentimes when we get desperate enough to seek God. I would say, if you consider continuing to hit bottom and are maybe giving up on yourself, giving up even maybe on God, asking God, where are you in the midst of this? I've been praying, I've been, struggling. Maybe I don't have a relationship with the church, or maybe I do. Maybe that for me that was very very ambiguous. But I knew that there was something out there, something greater, and I knew that I wasn't really living up to it. But I also saw God as a divine scorekeeper, not as someone that I could necessarily do business with. And so my perspective and my understanding of God needed to change. That all was made possible by finding a group of people who had suffered from the same addiction that I did, who had found a way, who had found a solution, who were willing to reach down into the gutter to pull me out, and really, not only save my life, but also then give me a way to live. That, none of them told me go to the church, but I felt compelled as a result of the miracles that God was working in my life, simply by, kind of following some directions that a group of people were suggesting. God was working miracles in my life. I couldn't stay sober for a day by myself. And all of a sudden, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days of sobriety, and this wasn't my idea, but rather just, going to some meetings, connecting with others, sharing what was going on in my life, working with a sponsor very soon into the recovery process. And then that developed tools where I didn't have to resort to alcohol, drugs, lustful behavior in order to cope with either challenges or even success in my life.
Thomas, thank you. Let me just come back to you real quick, Thomas, and see if you had a follow-up. Did you have any follow-up for our guest, Scott Weeman?
Yeah. Also, I noticed prayer helps with addiction too. It gave me a hope praying to God. But is prayer also part of the 12 step that he was talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Relationship, first admitting that step 1 in the 12-step process. Step 0 is to show up and really suit up and show up. Mm-hmm. And miracles can happen just as a result of that. But once we connect with other people we can relate to, who then can reframe our understanding of our own lives, and then we repeat the process of doing those new learned behaviors. Yeah, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take much time to kind of find some spiritual progress, some emotional progress, some physical progress, whatever we're leaning into. Although it does at the first seem like we're swimming upstream because addiction is cunning, baffling, and powerful, and so it has a grip on us, not on a biological level, on a cognitive level, certainly on a spiritual level.
Right.
Prayer is a very important part of the process. Step 1, as I was getting to, is admitting that we're powerless over fill in the blank, addiction, compulsion, unhealthy attachments, that our lives have become unmanageable. Then step 2 is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, which has some presumption of some insanity, and also an understanding that God can restore us to sanity. And so it's step 3, then surrender. Step 4, we make an inventory. Step 5, we share it with God, ourselves, and another person. We look at defects of characters. We make amends. We build a process for self-inventory on a daily basis that includes prayer and meditation. And then we give back to others what we were freely given.
Thomas, thank you. I hope all of that is helpful to you. You can always check out CatholicInRecovery.com, CatholicInRecovery.com. Lots of folks on the line. As happens when we have Scott Weeman here, and your calls are very welcome. We got a whole hour with Scott, so if you dial now, we'll do our very best to get you on, 888-318-7884. We go now to Des Moines, Iowa. Listening on Iowa Catholic Radio is Taylor. Taylor, thank you so much for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Scott Weeman.
Hey, so I guess my question is it's like 2 questions, and I'll try to be brief with it. Firstly, when I came into recovery, that was about 9 months ago, and I got sober and everything. I didn't believe in God at all, and it took many months for me to be intellectually converted, and it was as a direct result of seeing changes in my life when I tried to reach out to something outside of myself, and there were things that I just couldn't deny anymore. But one thing I still struggle with is believing that, trying to connect my recovery to God in any way other than that. I can see what he's done, but it's almost as if all the guilt and shame I feel about all of it and all of my mistakes, it's like I feel still that I can't go to him with that.
Oh.
And so that's something I'm kind of struggling with, and I don't know what your take would be on that. The other part, I guess, is a little bit simpler. My mom is still in active addiction, and she's got a lot of health problems and stuff, and I've been trying to get her to clean up or go to treatment and stuff. And I guess I just don't know. I want to know, what would be a good Christian response to her and everything, because it's really hard for me as somebody who's sober right now to talk to her and see her suffering like that, and she won't accept help. So I don't know if there's something I could say or an approach I could take. But,
okay.
Yeah.
2 great questions, Taylor. Scott?
First of all, congratulations on 9 months of sobriety.
Amen.
That is
God
a miracle.
bless
And sounds like a Reformed atheist that found, or agnostic, who recognized the miracles that God was working in her life, and is now open to deeper relationship with him. Praise God. I don't think that your second question is any easier than the first question, so I'll start with the first question first.
Okay.
That being, how do I incorporate my faith into recovery? How do I invite God into my recovery process? You might feel, some secular 12-step meetings are rather secular and do not necessarily invite or welcome a lot of specific discussions around God. It could be general, but as we get into some of the specifics, it can be a little bit more challenging. Certainly discussing, practices of praying a rosary might not be all that welcome in some groups, but there are plenty of opportunities to certainly see God in those meetings. And I think that when you say, I'm afraid to bring this to God, I think what I'm hearing is I'm afraid to bring it to the children of God with whom you might worship or whom you might, do church with. And therefore, I get that, and I felt that same thing, which was a lot more on me than it was necessarily the people who were around me, who were Christians around me, who were praising God and loving and worshiping and knowing him. But I felt that, I was very welcome to speak openly about my challenges, my defects of character, and the things that we're really struggling with in recovery meetings. But when it came to things like Bible studies or other groups where I was around Christian fellowship, it was I felt like I felt a sense of shame that, all these really good Catholic people, and I'm the only one with the problem. I think that we all kind of feel that way in some sense, though. That's not necessarily unique to those with addictions, although we might suffer from a greater sense of feeling either abandoned or excluded from a group, especially those, who are good Catholic people. I felt very honored to be among those who really helped welcome me into the church, and at the same time, I felt like I'm not really living up to them until I got to know them, and we started sharing really honest conversations around their struggles and the things that they were going through, the challenges that they found in a prayer routine, and we just bonded over not our shared strengths, but our shared weaknesses in many ways. And so I would strongly encourage you to invite God to be a part of that process, to incorporate the sacraments into that process, where if you look at 12-step recovery, and I'm guessing that you've probably have had some relationship with a 12-step group, that you'll see a lot of Christian, particularly Catholic, features within 12-step recovery. In fact, Father Ed Dowling, a Jesuit priest from St. Louis, met with Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, within the first few years of AA's start, and really had a big influence on him and his spiritual development and on the spiritual principles that are still around 12-step recovery today.
Now to the second question, Mom.
Yeah, now the second question, which is inevitably going to be brought up. I imagine that most people that reach out to us, most people that call, are calling on behalf of a loved one that's dealing with an addiction, not necessarily an addiction of your own. We are all bonded in some ways and have an unhealthy attachment to things that are not of God. Now that you've found recovery and are 9 months sober, I can understand you wanting the best for your loved ones, particularly your mother who's struggling with active addiction. And I think that the most Christian thing that we can do in response to that is to love unconditionally, to have healthy boundaries, and at the same time, and those healthy boundaries might mean really honest conversations that do not condemn, that really come from an understanding of, I know exactly, I know where you've been, I've been there too. And I not so much follow me. I mean, we claim as in 12-step recovery a tradition of attraction rather than promotion. And so no one really likes to be told what to do. If I had walked into the rooms of recovery and everyone had started telling me what to do, I probably wouldn't have stayed for very long. But what instead they did was they shared with me what they did. And that was very effective. And I think that as you continue to grow, as you continue to shine, you're going to be a great light in your family, and you're going to be a great light in your community, in your church. As you grow in your relationship with Jesus and incorporate your faith into your recovery, certainly recommend checking out the 12 Steps in the Sacraments, Catholic Journey Through Recovery. In fact, I'll send you a copy if you want to give Maria or someone afterwards your address. And that might be a helpful bridge to incorporating your faith.
Okay, Taylor?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. That's really awesome. I really appreciate the response and everything, and I'm going to try that with my mom. And congratulations on your clean time and new baby, too.
Thank you, Taylor.
Hang on.
Thanks, guys.
If you'd like, Taylor, Marie will get your information, and Scott will send you a copy of his book, The 12 Steps in the Sacraments. Can I just ask you a question that I don't know the answer to, and you might, because our bishop here, he wrote the foreword for the book.
Yeah.
And are there priests who are specifically trained to hear the confession, for example, of people who have suffered with addiction? And if there's not, can you go talk to our bishop? I think this is a good idea I just had.
This is one of many things that we have on a list of a very big vision for Catholic in recovery. But absolutely, yeah. There are some priests who are in recovery themselves. Addiction does not discriminate, and the solution does not discriminate. So there are many priests who are in recovery. Some of them are open about it. Some of them are not. They would be a great priest to speak to. The fifth step of recovery of the 12 steps says that we share our really a personal inventory that we do with God, ourselves, and another human being. Within the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it strongly encourages one to seek out a priest or their pastor, someone who they can trust to do that fifth step with.
He didn't write the foreword to my book. No, I didn't ask him, though. I don't want to make it. But I was so happy to see that, because it's important for people to know that a Catholic bishop is expressing love like that for people who suffer with addiction. That's what we're all supposed to do as a church. There's not supposed to be this judgment or distance between us.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Let's go to Ralph in San Bernardino, California, listening on the Alexa. Ralph, go ahead with your question for our guest, Scott Wieman.
Hi. Thanks so much for taking my call. I was just looking at the Counseling and Recovery website, and I saw the information about the upcoming retreat, and I was pretty interested in it. And I've been in 12-step programs for a number of years, and I've gone to 12-step retreats at Catholic retreat centers, and they haven't always been Catholic. Often there have been some weird stuff, like centering prayer and this stuff that doesn't, match up with the magisterial teaching of the church. So I guess my question is, if I sign up for this retreat, will I get a whole authentic Christ-centered Catholic retreat without the weird stuff?
Well, Scott's going to be there, so there'll be some weird stuff. But so I apologize, Scott. Now you have to wait. Hang on, Ralph, because I know the music's about to play. So can you hang on a minute, and then we'll get an answer for Scott about the retreat?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome.
CatholicInRecovery.com is where you go if you want to find out about that retreat coming up. Or anything else about Catholic in Recovery. Scott Wieman is our guest. We'll get an answer to him about whether the retreat's going to be weird or Catholic right after this.
This is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Thank you for listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Matt Swaim here. Join us tomorrow for the Sunrise Morning Show when Kevin Wells joins us to talk about his new book, Priest and Beggar, The Heroic Life of Venerable Aloysius Schwartz. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Our guest is Scott Wieman, the author of The 12 Steps and the Sacraments, and the founder of Catholic in Recovery, which you can find at CatholicInRecovery.com. And our caller, Ralph in San Bernardino, while we were talking, he went and looked it up, and then he found this retreat. And you can tell us about the retreat, Scott. But Ralph particularly wants to know, is it going to be weird?
Yeah.
Seems like a very fair question.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I appreciate Ralph, and I appreciate your call and checking out our website. We're really excited about an upcoming retreat that's going to be held in Wichita, Kansas at the Spiritual Life Center, July 30th through August 1st. And we've had people who have been meeting in virtual meetings the last 16 months or so.
And they're going to come.
And they're going to come.
Oh, isn't that great?
They've all been meeting each other via Zoom, sharing very personal things regarding their life together. and now getting to meet each other in person. So we're looking forward to that. And people who are not necessarily part of our community or have not attended a Catholic in Recovery meeting before, joining as well. There are, as Ralph mentioned, a lot of different Catholic addiction recovery retreats or Catholic 12-step retreats, and some might be Catholic in name only or verge outside of some Catholic doctrine. I will personally assure weirdness free for the most part.
Gonna be weirdness free.
Theological weirdness we'll keep away. We'll keep at a distance. But I can't set any expectations for just.
Well,
weird
I think
things happening.
often personal weirdness is a virtue. Like, we don't want people to get rid of their weirdness.
No.
We just don't want a retreat to be. Like sometimes you do get the false advertising. Really,
It's going to be very, very Catholic. We're going to be overlapping.
Wait, go ahead, Ralph. Say it again.
There's going to be confession available, and
we're going to have
like
confession available, adoration, mass, and so we'll be fully integrating the sacraments with 12-step addiction recovery. Of course, over the course of one retreat weekend, there's a lot to get to, but also we want to make time for personal prayer and for finding God in through prayer and through the sacraments and through talks, meetings. We're gonna have a lot of.
Did you say the dates?
Yes, July 30th through August 1st.
July 30th through August 1st.
Yep.
Okay, Ralph. Thanks. Appreciate your call and your question and the opportunity for Scott to get to talk a little bit about the retreat. Something else, or go to another call?
No, I would just say, hopefully the first of many to come. As we've had, some local events and things like that, but hopefully other regional retreats taking place on the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, South. Hopefully just the first of many to come.
Peter in Los Angeles, you are next. Peter, watching on YouTube. Glad to have you here. Peter, go ahead with your question for Scott Weeman.
Hi, Scott. Peter here. 25 days of sobriety.
Praise God. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. My question is, if we're in recovery, would you recommend drinking the blood of Christ at Mass?
That's a great question. One that you probably won't often hear discussed in a secular 12-step group.
Doesn't come up a lot?
Not too often, no. But awesome. Congratulations on 25 days of sobriety. That is a gift. Oh, man. My personal experience, I'll just share that. I did not receive the blood of Christ until one day I saw my sponsor, who was my AA sponsor, with maybe 4 months into my recovery. Man helped save my life. Taught me the important spiritual tradition of principles before personalities, which is another subject, but helped save my life. And I saw him take the blood of Christ at Mass once, and I was asking about it. I was curious, and he just mentioned that's something that he does. And but he also wasn't all that Catholic. Really, he was just kind of Catholic in name. I was 4 months sober, 4 months new to my faith. Didn't have a clue, It was just very, very new. So it was just kind of learning and discerning kind of, by seeing what other people were doing. I didn't take the blood of Christ until maybe a year and a half into sobriety, when I made this personal decision that I was going to take it on once a year on Good Friday, as something that kind of united me to the blood of Christ on this day, Good Friday. And, I did it once, and I was walking back, and I could feel just this little hint of this warmth inside of me. That was a very familiar warmth.
Right.
And that was enough to scare the crap out of me, that I no longer, after that, since have taken the blood of Christ. Let me, theologically, reception of one species, the body of Christ, is the fullness, the full reception of the full divinity of the Eucharist. And so don't feel like you're getting a portion of the Eucharist by not receiving the blood of Christ. There's no theological concerns there. So that's what I do. I've seen others do differently.
But also, if I may, on a little theology, the accidents of the wine remain. So the fact that you're very right to say blood of Christ, but no one should think, well, that's perfectly safe, because the taste, the smell, and the alcohol, the effects, these are all accidentals, and they're still there.
Yeah, this is all due diligence. I mean, it's all a matter of my recovery, which requires a deep relationship with Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, is the most important thing in my life. Yeah. It is more. I have to tell myself and remind myself that it's more important than my my marriage and my children, because it is the foundation, because those things don't exist without my recovery. And so anything that might challenge that, I have to be very, very, very careful about. And Peter, I would recommend you do the same. 25 days of recovery and of sobriety is an awesome start. I mean, one day at a time, praise God for this life that we get to live. And, you get to actually experience all of it.
Okay, Peter?
Okay.
All right,
Sounds
Matt.
good. Thank you very much.
I'll ask our listeners to pray for you as well, and thank you very, very much for the call. It's wonderful, good news. Where shall I go? I guess an anonymous. We have an anonymous caller. Let me just get to you, anonymous. You got to hang on real quick. All right, go ahead with your question for Scott Weeman.
So I at least several questions spring to my mind when I saw that the second hour was going to be about addiction. And I realized that the common theme of just wanting to get it all off my chest, so to speak, now that there's an opening that's appeared to me in my life of someone wants to talk about addiction, is that I don't have anyone, practically speaking, to discuss these things with.
Okay.
I mean, and mostly it's my own fault for having, well, I don't know, morally, but I tend to isolate myself, and so I was wondering what sorts of remedies would you recommend to sort of overcome that tendency to self-isolation, because that's where I fall to the sins that I deal with, is when I'm alone.
Mm-hmm. I would recommend, it was shared with me very early on in my recovery journey, that we ought to act our way into right thinking, that we can't just think our way into right action. And so, we often might just be paralyzed by the process of analysis, paralysis by analysis. That, I'm waiting for the right amount of courage, the right conditions in my life to kind of take this action. But truly, the best thing to do is just do it. The solution to isolation is fellowship. It's connection with other people. Truly, the solution to addiction is the same thing. It's connection. It's often said that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety or is not recovery, but it's connection. I think that's all encompassing in the same thing. But yes, to be, we oftentimes want to do these things on our own because they involve so much shame and so much fear. We think that we see other people doing it, but what does it say about me if I can't do it, if I can't overcome this? Well, we got to stop putting so much support or so much responsibility on ourselves for the solution. We've got to take the action, but upon us taking the action, again, God will move mountains. And so I would strongly suggest you get connected, and if there's not a fellowship nearby, if you don't have friends or family nearby that can experience that, which I didn't for a long time. I have a lot of family members active in addiction, a variety of types of addiction, and they weren't anyone that I can necessarily turn to for the solution. My parents and close friends, not recovering addicts or alcoholics, but and would share some things that they thought were helpful, but weren't necessarily helpful. It wasn't until someone looked me in the eye and said, "I know exactly how you feel. You don't ever have to drink again," that my life changed.
Wow.
And he basically, and he said, the same gentleman, who I was referring to about the Eucharist, he said, "You and I are going on a journey together, and neither one of us is coming back." And he was right, so he walked me through. He really showed me the way of, what was passed on to him and what was passed on to the person who passed it on to him. And, all of a sudden I've got what I would refer to as a spiritual board of directors around me who are not family members and not even necessarily friends, but someone that I can turn to. And it's such a gift to have an anonymous third person in my life that kind of knows everything about me, but I don't have to worry about any kind of like relational interests or just, so I can just be very honest. That's a huge gift. Not many people have that. And so I would strongly recommend trying to find that. And people who you can speak to and they can speak to you, and you don't have to say too much, they just get it.
Anonymous, how's that strike you?
I like the call to action.
Mm-hmm.
I will attempt to heed it by God's grace. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Thanks very, very much. And you can, and anyone else that's interested can find out more at CatholicInRecovery.com. CatholicInRecovery.com. Anonymous, thank you very much for that call.
We've got a virtual Catholic in Recovery meeting that starts right as this show concludes.
Oh, so you're inviting Anonymous to come?
Yeah.
Let's say he takes you up on the offer.
Yeah.
What, he's going to have to talk? What's he going to have to do?
Not necessarily.
No?
So we'll get into a Zoom meeting. It's an hour long. It'll begin. Someone will be facilitating the meeting. You get in a few minutes early. There's what we call the meeting before the meeting, just a little bit of banter. That's a little bit challenged by Zoom because you can really only have one conversation at once rather than just a couple of separate, very personal conversations, maybe just icebreaking conversations. And then we get into prayer. We pray together. We read a little preamble that discusses the nature of the meetings. We pray the full serenity prayer, very Christian in its fullness. We read some meeting guidelines, pray the Lord's Prayer, read the 12 steps, introduce ourselves. That can be just done by typing, hey, I don't want to talk, I'm just listening today. And then we get into reading a meeting reflection, which ties together scripture from the upcoming Sunday's Mass readings with recovery themes and liturgical principles or liturgical themes, recovery principles. And that launches us into an open discussion where we just share experience, strength, and hope. There's a few prompting reflection questions that if you're not really sure what to share, what to say on, you can just kind of respond to some very open-ended reflection questions. And we just go around the room. Everyone shares for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And that's enough to connect, to hear a solution, and to recognize that you're not alone. And within that, I don't know how the magic happens, but God is evident, is there with us, and healing occurs. It's something that happens that just disarms us and really gives us both the hope and healing's happening in real time. It's amazing to see. And, like I said, there's nowhere else in the world where I can just speak openly and, about the things that I was the most ashamed about in my entire life. And, I thought that there was never going to be a solution to PSI. I thought that I was going to be living my entire life at like a 60% handicap, just kind of being a downer to everyone else. But maybe I'd convince someone to marry me or something like that, and I'd kind of get by, but just be challenged. God has changed all that.
Yeah, anonymous. So if I just want to make sure, because someone's listening and says, I want to go to that meeting.
Yeah.
CatholicsInRecovery.com, and it'll explain to you how to get to the meeting?
CatholicinRecovery.com.
What did I say? Catholics in Recovery?
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. I think if you go there, it directs you to our website anyway.
Okay, so CatholicInRecovery.com, and that will get you to the meeting, and you can participate verbally if you want, but you don't have to.
Yeah, of course. The more you're willing to enter into the recovery process, the more you're going to get out of it, But totally, there's reason to understand, just checking it out, even using a fake name. There's one person in our community who uses a fake name. She, because she wasn't really sure the whole time, and then she got like totally immersed in the community, and has all sorts of friends, and she's like,
but my real name is Janet.
Yeah.
That's not her real name, by the way. I just made that up. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of your questions for Scott Weeman, the founder of Catholic in Recovery and the author of The 12 Steps and the Sacraments.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN podcasts are the perfect companion for busy Catholics everywhere. Your favorite EWTN programs are waiting for you to listen to on your time. With on-demand access to audio, you can pause and pick up right where you left off, anytime, anywhere. Just subscribe by using your mobile device's free podcast app. Find old favorites or discover something new. EWTN podcasts. They're waiting for you.
Do you want to end abortion, halt the attack on traditional marriage, and ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? To do this, we must convert the culture. St. Paul's Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing the gospel in your area, visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. In so many ways, Scott Weeman is just a winner in life, and especially today because for being a guest, he's getting a free copy of my book. Do you like how I did that?
Yeah.
A teacher of strange things, who Jesus was, what he taught, and why people still follow him. You are so lucky, Scott, that you're getting your own copy.
Yes, I am.
Of this. And people can get their copy for 25% off by going to shop.catholic.com. Just use the promo code TEACHME when you check out. A teacher of strange things, who Jesus was, what he taught and why people still follow him. 25% off right now at shop.catholic.com when you use the promo code TEACHME. Back to the phones we go. By the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Scott Wieman, the founder of Catholic in Recovery and the owner of a brand new book called A Teacher of Strange Things. Stephanie in New Orleans is next, listening on Catholic.com. Hi, Stephanie. No?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, hi, Stephanie. Go ahead with your question for Scott.
Okay. Hi, Scott. Stephanie from New Orleans.
Hi, Stephanie.
Okay, Scott, I started on the virtual meetings, and it was the perfect way for me to start, because I just felt so much shame, and I felt I really didn't have a lot of courage. So it was an easy way for me to start going to the meetings. I would like to start a group in New Orleans, and if people wanted to start a group in their hometown, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Stephanie. And before I answer that, would you actually share a little bit more about kind of what that was like, kind of easing into the a recovery meeting virtually? The last caller, we spoke about just kind of like what that's like, or what to expect when joining a meeting. Could you speak on that for a moment?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. Well, what was really nice about it is, you're muted. You have the option to put your camera on or off, and that was really a great comfort to me, because it was just so much less intimidating. And again, like I said, I just felt so much fear and shame just doing something new. And then, but it was like I just felt like I came home, like all of what I wanted, just the deep desire of my heart of just unconditional love and acceptance. It was like literally walking into the gospel, just the welcome and the love, the sincere acceptance, without, again, making a big deal, just people sharing their experience, hope, and strength, allowed me to open up and feel safe. It was that emotional safety that I just craved so much. And I really found it in that room, and the unconditional love. And I really felt like this is the gospel. And so it became much easier for me to, speak, appear on camera, and just share my experience. And I could feel the acceptance and the strength from the group. And I think you had said one time, Scott, if wounding happened in community, and the healing will be found in community. And I've really found that to be true.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing and calling in. And to answer your question regarding how does one start a local group, it's the healing that happens in a virtual meeting is awesome, and as Stephanie mentioned, can be a really nice kind of introduction to a 12-step recovery group or a Catholic in recovery group. But to be in person together, and to be to see the eyes glaring back, the eye contact, those eyes that say, yeah, I get it. Yeah. That's so powerful too. And so yes, if one is interested, and what's nice about having virtual meetings is that we have a lot of different meeting types. So we have general recovery meetings for people with a variety of different addictions, compulsions, and unhealthy attachments. We also have family meetings, meetings for family members impacted by a variety of addictions. One meeting specifically on Thursday for family members impacted by a loved one's lust addiction, which there's very few resources available at the moment for those who are impacted by betrayal trauma, for pornography use or different sexual addictions.
Yeah.
Also a meeting for adult children of alcoholics or dysfunctional homes that meets on Friday nights. And so one can participate in a variety of virtual meetings, but then also have a local fellowship, and that we have about 40 different fellowships or meetings around the country in 10 different states, starting a group in Abbeville, Louisiana soon, but looking forward, hopefully, Stephanie, to get a group started in New Orleans as well. There's a place on our website under the meeting button or the meeting menu option to start a group, and that will provide a little inquiry form to fill out, and then we'll get in touch about discussing what does it look like, what are the next steps. Of course, we want to involve the parish if we possibly can, where that can be a source of healing, and then also just discern what's the best practices, where might a meeting meeting take place? What does that look like? All that kind of stuff, all the details. But very, very eager, especially as we come out of this pandemic, to gather people in person because that's our solution. And with 15, 16 months of isolation is no good. We need to be back together.
Stephanie, this is Sai. I just want to say thanks for your call and for your witness. It means so much because I do think, taking that first step is so hard. To have somebody testify to the experience of the gospel there, it's just beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your work, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to John in Steubenville, Ohio. It doesn't say how he's listening, but he's listening somehow. Hi, John. You got a question for Scott Weeman?
Hi. How you doing? Yeah, I'm originally I am from Columbus. I'm in Steubenville on vacation at the Apostolate for Family Consecration. And I wanted to talk a minute about, the Big Book of AA talks about in the chapter to the Gnostics on page 45, 44, about how the main reason of the book, the Big Book, is to help us come to a relationship with our God, with our higher power as we understand Him. And after 21 years of sobriety, I find that there is this slow separation from God and AA, and in turn sought out and found Catholic in Recovery. And Scott, I'd like to talk, if you could talk for a minute about how our sacraments apply to our recovery, sacrament of reconciliation, baptism, how those are connected to. I find a lot of it's very enlightening and very empowering to me to know how the sacraments will work in my recovery.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, John. Thanks for calling in. Someone who has some familiarity with certainly the 12 steps and its formation and its founding, and the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, a book that helped save my life. In fact, as I was working together with my sponsor in my early recovery, he would have the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous in one hand and the Bible in another hand, and he would say, "This book, the Bible, is for people who don't want to go to hell. This book, the Big Book, is for people who have been there and have no interest in ever going back." Which, begins kind of really the plunge into recovery that we ought to take. The first 3 steps in my book, the 12 steps in the sacraments, I overlap with the sacrament of baptism, really this plunge that we take, which we think of baptism as bright lights and, God opening up and the clouds opening up and hearing, "This is my beloved child with whom I'm well pleased." And there is certainly a huge element of that within this, the first step, as we admit our powerlessness and then surrender that to God. But, and similarly, there's also a baptism which Jesus refers to, with which he says, "There's a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it's completed." And that is referring to this kind of spiritual death that we also plunge ourselves into in our baptism. And so we can see, just kind of the death to this old self, but this rising and this baptism, this claiming of new life that begins in the first 3 steps. And then there's great overlap with the sacrament of reconciliation in steps 4 through 9. Truly the fullness of the sacrament, not just the car wash version where we're in every other week to make sure that we're just kind of, keeping a rinse and repeat, a little spotty clean, but rather, doing a thorough inventory and then confessing and then asking God to remove whatever defects of character stand in the way of serving Him and others, and then making amends or doing a thorough penance. And that's all really wrapped within the 12 steps. Steps 10 and 11, we overlap with the sacrament of the Eucharist, which is truly our daily bread, our source of spiritual food and spiritual wellness. And then in step 12, which just like in confirmation, we give it away. We share the good news. Go and baptize all nations in the name of our Lord. And so we freely share what was given to us. And that's, in a nutshell, really how we overlap the sacraments with the 12 steps. Of course, we don't discourage anyone from attending other secular 12-step groups. I do myself and continue to. But Catholic in Recovery is nice because it allows one to infuse the doctrine and really traditions of our faith into our recovery, which requires God to be at the center of.
What do you think, John?
Well, I absolutely, and I think that Catholic in Recovery does not replace my AA 12-step meetings, but it's a supplemental, and it certainly is the strongest part of my recovery program today. So, John, thanks for being here for us, Scott. God bless you.
John, if I may, we only have less than a minute left, but what did you mean when you said there's a growing separation between God and AA? What were you referring to?
We see that everywhere in the world today, that there's a separation from God and our society. And we see that in AA and have seen that over the past 21 years that I've been attending. It's there, and this is a way for people to come back and really find Christ as the center of their recovery, which is what AA was based on. It started on back in the 1930s, 40s.
I've got you, John.
With Bill.
Thank you very, very much for your call, and that's the case. There's some of AA is moving away from the God part.
I think, as John mentioned, kind of in the same kind of pace that our culture is.
Yeah.
There are some groups that you'll find still have, greater devotions to God, different, maybe more prayers prayed. Others that are maybe discouraged discussions of God.
The name of the book is The 12 Steps and the 7 Sacraments. No, The 12 Steps and the Sacraments. Who publishes it? I forgot.
Ave Maria Press.
Ave Maria Press. You won't be disappointed. You really won't. Also, go to CatholicInRecovery.com to find out more about what Scott Weeman does, and maybe find out how you can be connected to a Catholic in Recovery meeting. Scott, it's always just great. Did we cover everything? Is there anything? The retreat? Oh, there's a workworkbook coming out. Is that also going to be from Ave Maria Press?
It is, yeah. We'll talk about that next time.
Well, next time. All right, we'll have you here soon, I hope. Thanks,
September.
Scott Weeman. That does it for us. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.